Tanakato, 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 Atoa. My name is Allison Dolan, and I am from the Catalina Mountains and the Colorado River. That is my best impression of a proper Maori introduction to an audience. It literally translates to, I acknowledge you, I acknowledge you, I acknowledge all of you. So thank you for being here. And then it goes into your name, and then the mountain range, and the water source that you identify with as home. I find that to be an extremely powerful way to introduce yourself. The Maori culture had a huge influence on me when I was on my field studies experience in New Zealand. I'm going to tell you guys more about that today. Now I come to you, I was a student, now I come to you as a senior field studies advisor for the same program. So it clearly had an impact on me, and I wanted to get a job with them eventually. Let's see if I can work this. Nope, now I can. Okay, so I invite you guys to step into my hiking boots while I take you on a digital documentation of a field studies course that I did 5 years ago. So every October I get a little tingling in my system because I did a fall program. It's when everything kind of came to fruition for me. So imagine you are a student, you've signed up to do a field studies course, it's finally all happening, and now you are sitting on a plane and you are ready to travel halfway across the world. For some, it will be their first time leaving the country. And you are going to go meet up with 8 to 16 strangers at a meeting point, which in my case was a hostel in downtown Auckland. And not only are you going to be meeting these people, but you are going to be living in close quarters with these people. You are going to be preparing meals together. And at times, you are going to be exerting all of your physical strength around these individuals. While you're doing that, you're also trying to keep it cool and absorb every ounce of knowledge coming your way. I'm pretty sure the proper term for this is called the butterflies. That's what I was feeling while I was sitting on this airplane, ready to meet up with all these people. So I was nervous, anxious, excited, timid, courageous. I had this whole bowl of soup of emotions going on in my stomach, but I'm pretty sure the technical name is the butterflies. Every time I get the butterflies, it's because I'm about to step out of my comfort zone and take on a new risk, a new challenge. Field studies courses tend to attract this type of individual. I didn't even know I was this type of individual until I was sitting on this plane like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. Let's do it. But it tends to attract this certain personality type, and I believe it's in these uncomfortable moments where a lot of transformation and growth are happening. I invite you guys, if you're not students today, to think about field studies as any time you have stepped out of your comfort zone and you've invited a new challenge into your life. So that can be many different things. I'm going to be using the term field studies, but feel free to interpret as you will. On this presentation, I will be talking about some of the academics in our program, along with the interpersonal values and the life skills that you are getting from it that is not well defined in the syllabus. And then I'm going to talk about the people that make it happen, the instructors and the students themselves. So not all classrooms have 4 walls. In this case, in this photo on the right, this particular classroom has 4 legs and a trunk. It's also known as an elephant. You can see our students kind of poking their heads out there to take some pictures. So again, these field studies courses that I'm talking about today, you can think of them however you will. They could be volunteer opportunities. I know that you could volunteer with Woofer or with Workaway if it's not financially in your means to do a field studies program. There's plenty of ways to step outside of your comfort zone and invite this transformation to take place. You could join a club. You can find an internship. There are a lot of different opportunities out there for you. So places to go and people to see. Wildlands currently offers 15 different programs. The ones highlighted in yellow down towards the bottom are our 2-week courses. They yield 5 quarter credits, while the other ones are all going to give you 15 quarter credits and are around 6 weeks long. I put those little icons so you can tell which ones are in fall, winter, spring, and summer. But keep in mind that when it's summer here, it's not summer in chilly. It's not summer in New Zealand and in other programs that we offer. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at that list there. So what do some of these classes look like? So an environmental wildland studies class is going to cover topics that are regionally specific, and they're going to be things that are affecting that ecosystem. In New Zealand, I'll get into that, about what those topics could mean. An environmental field survey course is going to be the means to measure these impacts, so the assessments and other quantitative methods to be able to analyze and interpret what these are. And then there's the Wildlands Environment and Culture course, and that is going to be focusing on traditional and current cultural groups and their connection to the land. So in New Zealand, what that meant for me, an environmental wildland studies course looked an awful lot like the fight to save the flightless bird. So there we have a kiwi up there. They evolved on a once predator-free island. So they were not used to human settlement by any means, and their population has declined significantly. They are now endangered. And we were working with different rangers to track these kiwis and to look into efforts to restore the population size. An environmental field survey could look like these muddy calves up here from wading around a wetland ecosystem to remove invasive eucalyptus trees. Could also look like this purple pouch fungus down at the bottom left, doing a plant identification walk and coming across some beautiful looking mushroom and then finding out that it is native to Australia and the beech forests of New Zealand. And then it could also be building habitat boxes for little blue penguins, which was pretty sweet. A Wildlands Environment and Culture course could manifest into living with a Maori family on their paw and getting to do personal interviews with them about whatever your research topic was. My research topic that I chose to study was Maori culture and how they view life and death in the land. Found it to be very interesting because in Maori culture, when a child is born, they bury the placenta on that property, and then when they die, they return the body back to where that was buried. So it's coming full circle, which I found to be really fascinating. So this is a quote up here from one of our alumni who says, "Lectures simply just don't substitute for experiencing firsthand ecological diversity of a tropical environment." He was studying in Central America, and when he gave us this quote, he was talking specifically about when he was backpacking and having his field guides out and looking at things firsthand. He went on to become an environmental scientist and does pesticide regulation for California's department. I've got a little video here for you guys that some students of ours put together on the Peru program. They went on a night hike together. So you get a break from my voice for a minute.
All right, squad, what are you doing tonight?
Night hike! There's a spider. Look at these flamingos. Somebody put their finger next to that for like that.
So many of them.
The only thing I'm afraid of in this jungle is...
I'm not so amused. right, guys, how was that tonight?
Really
Awesome. No. Yeah. Pretty sick.
So there's nothing like a real life experience to teach you not to poke a red ant hole. I don't know if you guys caught that, but he was like dusting off ants in that video. Yeah, not something I would advise. Let's see. Hello, YouTube. Do I have to click it? There we go. Okay. So outside of the academic value, there are interpersonal skills to be gained on these expeditions, especially when you're in a group living situation with people who were once strangers and have then become really good friends of yours. So I put together a short list of how I was feeling post-field studies trip, and that was a whole new level of confidence. If you would have told me 5 years ago today that I'd be talking to a group on this scale, I would have definitely laughed. I would have been like, that's funny. No, I'm not. And yet here I am today. So I keep pushing myself and putting myself in these uncomfortable experiences, and I keep growing, and I love it. And now I take it as my time to be able to teach other generations of scientists to be able to go out into the world and do this type of thing. Social awareness and new perspective. One really interesting example I have of that is in Maori culture, it is not appropriate for you to touch the top of somebody else's head. It's also not appropriate for you to sit on top of a surface that's not a chair, so just a table or a countertop. It's extremely offensive to them in their culture. This is where your mana is. This is where your higher being and your higher self is. And if you do that to somebody else, you are taking it away from them, and that's not advised. So that's something that I would have never probably learned had I not been living on this family's paw and experiencing this with them. And then stewardship, strength, empowerment, and knowing my limits. So at the beginning of these journeys, you know, you're a little bit more shy with these strangers, and so you're pushing yourself a little bit harder. And you're like, no, I don't need a break. I don't need a break. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. And then by the end of the 6 weeks, you're like, yep, I need 5 minutes. Just need a breather here. And you just really get comfortable with this group of people. But it made me understand, like, if you are getting hot spots on your feet, our TA, who's in the photo in the far right, was really great about warning students if you ever feel a hot spot coming on your feet to take a rest, take off your shoes, and let them get some fresh air, because the last thing you want when you're backpacking is a big blister. So that was something about knowing my limits now for when I feel something like that coming on. So the type of stewardship that I'm talking about, I hope I see all of your hands go up when I ask this. Who here has heard of leave no trace? Thank you. Okay, great. So this goes beyond leave no trace. This is a whole new format for me that I now live with. This is my friend Kyle. He climbed over a banister and reached into the water and got out this plastic bag with his big toe. This is the type of dedication I'm talking about. It's cleaning up after other people's messes as well. It's leaving a place better than you found it. Where we're at in today's culture and life in general is we have generations to clean up after now. So we have to look beyond ourselves, and we have to make a place better than when we found it. This is the type of stewardship I want to embed that I got from my New Zealand program. So just a fair warning, these field studies opportunities have been known to ignite new career decisions. They help you clarify your goals, and they kind of navigate you towards what it is you like to do, and then you get to see firsthand people doing it. So let's get a quick recap. In field studies programs, they have a transformational effect because there is academic value, there's intrapersonal value, and then there's these other life experiences that, for lack of better words, I call it life experiences, but there's plenty of different things that you can get out of these outside of those two other topics. So you're exploring different careers because you are working firsthand with different scientists in the field, and you're finding your focus. That happens pretty organically. You tend to gravitate towards the things that you're really interested in, I didn't know that I was super into plant identification until I went on one of these programs. And now every time I'm on a hike, I have like my little field guide and I have my binoculars and I'm all ready for the day. So that was something I gained personally. And then networking, you're networking first with the level from the members coming your way. They're from all different parts of North America. So everybody has a different job they've done and that they can share with you and pass forward these new ideas. And then there's your instructor who is really robust in their professional career. So they can offer you a whole bunch of different ideas and input about decisions for your career. And then there's the people that you're meeting along the journey. So I didn't have a Facebook before I went to New Zealand. And then when I came back, I made sure to reactivate a Facebook. That way I could connect with everybody who I had met on my program, because I did not want to lose touch with this Maori family and some of the scientists that I found when I was over there. So now I just know that if I ever go back there, I can reach out to them, and because I was respectful, I'm sure they'd be happy to have me back. Friendship. So back to this group of 8 to 16 strangers that you first met. Every time, so I was the only one that came from Arizona in my group, so I like stuck out like a cactus. Every time I'm in Washington or I'm in Oregon or California or the different places where these students came from, I can reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm in town for a couple days. Do you have a good hike? And they're like, oh, you're in town? Oh my gosh, what days? Let me know. I want to take you to a coffee shop, do this, 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 and this. So it's like a personal reference that I now just get to call on, which is pretty awesome to me. And then standing out on applications. So these different cultural experiences or scientific experiences that you're having, I was able to get an interview because they were interested in how I worked with little blue penguins. So I'm really glad that I threw that on my resume, and obviously we encourage students to put whatever they can on their resume and how they gained whatever experiences they had coming at them from our field studies courses. And then backcountry skills. When I first started, I wasn't much of a backpacker. I did a bunch of hiking and I did a bunch of camping, but never did I put the two together. And then I learned a tremendous amount. Now I can like pack my pack up in like 5 minutes and be out the door ready to go. I got everything I need. Cooking, I started off with like dehydrated meals, and then by the end of the trip, I was making like the most elaborate, delicious backcountry fresh food meals you can think of, and it was all inspiration from my instructors and from my other team members. In my field journal, I have like a bunch of recipes that I saved because I was like, tell me more? Yeah, that's perfect. So I really took on a whole nother level when it comes to cooking in the backcountry. We used to say, it's front country, it's front country good, but it's backcountry bomb. That was like our favorite. And then different navigation. Obviously you get way more comfortable when you're outside and you're exploring just through your experiences. So who are these magical people putting together these courses? They are our instructors, of course. They hail from all different parts of the world, and they curate our programs, put together a nice visually appealing list here of some of our instructors. And then I just want to highlight a few because, again, they're all robust in their own right, and they have these different, this is only a portion of what they do, is teach for 6 weeks at a time or 2 weeks at a time, but this is not the extent of what it is they bring to the scientific community. So top row there, Nicole Crane. She teaches our Big Sur program. She's been teaching that program for 21 years. And then as I was preparing for this talk, I realized she has written an entire paper about basically what I'm talking about today. So it's kind of a lengthy title, but it's the role of inquiry-driven, field-based ecological science classes and college students' development as scientists. So I was like, well, what do you know? I guess everybody knows that. I'm just finding it out. And then we have Jeff here, who I want to highlight. He does the Peru and Ecuador program. He published his work on the impacts of roads in the Amazon rainforest. Students on those programs in Peru and Ecuador, he's getting the research directly from them in the field. It's what the challenge is that that's one of the topics that they're covering. And then there is Matt here. Matt teaches the South Africa and New Zealand program. Let's see, I wrote So his PhD research drew on ecology, psychology, and education to explore how meaningful nature experience supports transformative learning for sustainability. So again, it's like exactly what this topic is about, and how the more we get into the field and the more we put ourselves in these uncomfortable positions and are taking on new risks, we're bound to have transformation occur. So program design. All of our programs are really small and intimate, so they're groups of 8 to 16 students, and you have a lead instructor, sometimes a co-instructor, and then sometimes a TA as well. And then they're nomadic by nature, so you're never in one place for more than a week at a time, which was really great for me. So we flew into Auckland, went on a hike, one of the great walks in New Zealand in the center of the South Island, known as Tongariro Crossing, which is also, do we have any Lord of the Rings fans? Mount Doom. I got to hike Mount Doom. It was pretty cool. So that was great for me. And then we ended up going to Wellington, took a ferry, and then went to an island that had been completely eradicated from invasive and non-native species, which is where we built the habitat boxes for little blue penguins, and where I got to see these wettas, which are like giant herbivores that look like grasshoppers, and they're really crazy looking, but they're really docile and nice, but I couldn't get over how creepy they looked. Let's see. And then we made our way all the way to the South Island. So I felt like I got to explore the entire country in 6 weeks. I know 6 weeks doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're getting up every morning at like 7 or 8 a.m. and then doing hands-on stuff all day long, it feels like a good amount of time, and it feels like you're covering a lot, especially in landscape-wise. And then again, back to these instructors, they all have scientific and cultural connections. So they're the ones that are designing these programs, and they're the ones that are going to put you in contact, for me, with that Maori family, and with a ranger we got to go backpacking with in the Kahurangi National Forest. And he was tracking kiwis, and he had this device that would track the kiwis based off of like, I don't know, it was like radio, I'm not really sure, but every time he turned it, it would be like, and it would be like a little pterodactyl noise, and he'd be like, all right, we got to go this way 5 more feet. And then we would like check it again, and I was like, this is crazy. It was so neat for me. And then all of our instructors tend to have this like sense of fun and adventure about them. So they all are here on these programs and are putting themselves into these programs because they want students to have this transformational effect. They want you guys to enjoy what you're learning and for it to be academically rigorous, but for you to have an incredible time and super memorable and great experience. So who are these alumni that I'm talking about? So since 2010, we've had just under 2,000 students on our programs. That's about 200 students on average a year. You guys make up about 11% of that total group. These students from this data set are coming from 115 different universities. Again, back to the fact that all of the students are from different parts of North America. I absolutely loved that part because you just are thrown into the mix that much more. It feels like the universe has sent you all there at that one place because you all signed up for this program. So I want to read a quote or two from some Western Washington University students, if I can find them here. Okay. So Meredith, who was an ESCI major, said, "I loved getting to be immersed in an environment and learned so much about it. The experience I had doing field work with researchers solidified my decision to be an environmental science major." And then we have Rita, who also was ESCI. "The things that really stand out in my head now are the cultural experiences we had and the vast amount of landscapes and terrain we got to see. We got to see a large portion of the Himalayan region for only being there in 6 weeks. We trekked through so many different ecological zones and learned about each one that we went through. That is the best way to learn, in my opinion. As far as cultural experience, I firmly believe I would not have been able to receive that intimate of a connection with local people traveling in any other way. So I found out I was not alone, basically, with having this be such a powerful experience for myself as well. I've recently sent a questionnaire out to alumni, and I keep getting these quotes back from them, and I'm like, I get like chills when I read them, and I'm like, ah, yes, exactly, that's what I'm talking about. So a variety of jobs. There's me holding that weta that I had mentioned, and there is my friend Jordan just getting an absolute kick out of me freaking out. So after having graduated, I went to Utah and I became a field trip guide for elementary school students, and I took them in like our native 180-acre zone of just Utah plants only. So that was really special for me to be able to teach students obviously the differences between a maintained garden and then just a natural preserve. I was also a team lead on an AmeriCorps trip. On that trip, we backpacked into the Escalante watershed in Escalante National Monument, and I was chainsawing down invasive Russian olive trees. Again, if you would have told me, are you gonna be really great with chainsaws in a couple years? I would have said, no, that's not gonna be for me. But now I can like take it apart, reassemble it, and put it back together and make it work again. And that feels pretty empowering, all on its own. And then I became a visible emissions consultant with virtual technology, and I really focused on air quality when I worked on this job. We were at the forefront of visible emissions monitoring techniques. So traditionally, we have monitored visible emissions with our eyeballs, which is pretty wild to me. I worked for a company that was using camera software to do it, and then we would send in the images and use algorithms to interpret the amount of opacity coming out of stacks. I could do a whole hour-long topic just on that one job that I did. But instead, I wanted to get back into the field, and so I went on to get my wilderness first responder. I wanted to do some guiding again, and then I found out that there was an opening for this job, and this was my form of repaying it, or paying it forward, so to say, for students. So I want to be able to tell you guys about the impact that this program had on my life. And again, this can happen in any field studies way. This is not just through Wildland Studies. This is any time you're putting yourself out there and you're taking on new challenges. So we have another alumni here, Mac Wing. He did the Costa Rica and Guatemala program in 2011, and then he also came back in 2012 to do the Peru program. As I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, all of our programs have the same course credit, but they offer wildly different interpretations of what those might mean. So he was able to earn an additional 15 quarter credits to go towards his major by doing 2 programs. And then he came back as a TA for the Peru program a few years later, I guess, in 2015. So it changed my perspective on everything from travel to culture to conservation. He's now a biologist, and he's working in Costa Rica, which is pretty neat. And then we have Lane Smith here. Lane is a really awesome woman. She did our Chile program in 2011. She's now a field instructor for 3 different organizations. You can read there. And she's also a guide for 2 different organizations. She teaches 200 days of the year to students in the backcountry, and then she's off for the rest of the time, so it's a pretty good setup, and she lives in Norway for part of the year as well. So if we read her quote here, there's one part that really stuck out to me. So Wildland Studies is a program that opened the door for me to be aware, think critically, expand my curiosity, tolerate adversity, and to not be afraid of the world, but to explore it. So my favorite part of this whole quote is the ability to tolerate adversity. As an environmental studies major, for lack of a better word, it can sometimes be very depressing because you are learning about all the things going wrong with the world instead of all these really positive things. So to be able to tolerate adversity and see beyond that, and to maybe be at the forefront of these problems and to be documenting biodiversity and other things, It's amazing. It's a great way to get out there. The world needs good fighters, and we are hoping to produce them. So that really resonated with me on a deeper level. So Wildland Studies is a pretty amazing organization that I went through, but again, you can do field studies through a lot of different outlets, and I encourage you guys to get out into the field and to work with your hands and to push yourself and to take on new challenges, because it's really transformational and it offers a great opportunity for you in the science community. So thank you guys for listening to my talk. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou atoa. Thank you.